Hey, thank you guys for tuning in. This is Jonathan Moulton. I'm here with a new tutorial today. We're going to be going over Trapcode Form, and this is going to be more for like a beginner style tutorial, just to let you know, but if you have used it before, it might be a good touch-up tutorial as well. And what we have on the screen right now is what we're going to create. And one of the things I want to say right off the bat, part of this, for this project, I'm not using any pre-made materials whatsoever. That way you guys can follow along 100%. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. Go to your After Effects, create yourself a new comp, and go ahead and save it wherever you need to save it. Then we're gonna go ahead and make a new composition. We're gonna call this logo. And normally, if you're creating something that you want to use for form, you got to know your output format. And my output format this time is going to be 720p. However, I'm going to make a 1K by 1K logo, which is incorrect for what we need, but I'm doing it on purpose so we run into a problem later on that we can fix later on. But it's not going to affect the workflow whatsoever. We'll just need to fix one thing later on. Just trying to let you know. Go ahead and set it to 10 seconds. So another reason I want to do this is because sometimes you'll get artwork from clients and you need to essentially utilize that artwork, and it's not always going to be artwork that's set in your output format. So that's part of the reason I'm doing it. So let's go ahead and move this up. Let's create a new solid, and let's call it black solid 1K. That way we know it's the 1000 by 1000 black solid. Okay, then we're going to do a new solid. We're going to call it white solid 1K. Cool. So now, while having the white solid selected, let's get our masking tool, the elliptical, and hold shift while you do it. And we're going to go select the mask and turn it to subtract. And press F on the keyboard to bring up the feather properties for the mask. And we're going to feather it somewhere around, like, I'll say 250. Okay, let's select the mask, Control C, select the layer, Control V, open up the properties, set your feather to 0, change it from subtract to intersect, and we're going to use the mask expansion tool to bring it in just a little bit. So right now, what I want to go and do is I'm going to relabel these so I know what they are. So I'm going to say mask fader, because it fades the white to black. This one is going to be mask outer rim. Okay, so let's select the mask outer rim, copy it, paste it, open this up, and we're going to change this to subtract, and we're going to change the expansion to something about right here. Now, just to let you know, I'm not focusing on specific numbers. I'm focusing more on just getting it to look and feel right at the moment. Again, this is a tutorial for form, not a tutorial for creating a logo. So let's make all of these small. I'm going to grab the bottom two, copy them, and put them onto the black solid. So now when we use toggle transparency, if we take this off, you'll see it copied over basically the circles. Mainly because if I didn't have that, if I took away this with the transparency still on, our white layer is fairly transparent, which I don't want right now. Okay, and let's go ahead and just throw in a text layer. I like to pull the text from here, which it ended up not being where I wanted it to be, so just move it. Good. Let's turn this off. Cool. We'll pretend that that's our logo. All right, so let's make a new composition and call it logo form. And this time, let's go ahead and set it to 720p, 29 frames per second, leave it at 10 seconds. Sure, that's good. Let's drag our logo into that composition, press S for scale, and turn it to 70%. Great, that looks good. All right, now let's go and find form, which I have it already selected there, but you just go under Trapcode and you'll find form. Drag and drop it onto your layer. Now for the beginners who are starting off, you're probably looking at this and thinking, what is going on? And it's not showing you anything that you need. So before we jump to what you need so you can see your layer, your logo, let's go to base form real quick and change size X to 1000, size Y to 1000, and size Z to 1. Okay? Now the reason I'm doing that is these need to be based off of whatever your layer is. If it's not, then your layer is going to be skewed, which I'll actually show you here in just a second. So let's go ahead and minimize that. Go down to layer maps under color and alpha, where it says layer, you're going to select it and go to logo. And then you're going to do RGBA to RGBA. And after that, go to map over XY. Now you can sort of see what's going on. Great. Now one thing I want to show you, let's go back to base form, and in particles X, Y, and Z, let's just crank that up to, let's say 600 by 600. And then in the Z, we don't need very much, so let's do 1 for now. And as you notice, it does kind of get dark, but if you do 2, just letting you know, that's 2 things. You got 600 by 600 by 2. That's a lot more particles to render. So doing 1 is just fine, because if you really want to be able to see your logo, at least while you're working on it, go ahead and go into particle and go to your size and crank that up to 2, maybe 3. 2 looks good right here, so we'll stick with that. So let's go back to base form. Now, what I wanted to show you is size XYZ. If you did not have that to the right dimensions, it will just skew it. So it needs to be at the same dimensions as the source composition or the source file, so it doesn't get skewed. Okay, for now we're good in base form. In particle, the only thing I changed was the size to 2. So for right now we're fine. Later on I will be messing with the opacity in here, and I'll also be messing with the opacity random. And if you really wanted to add a little bit more of a variance to the final render, you can use size random potentially. But for this tutorial, again, kind of a beginner tutorial, so I just want to show you how to create something kind of cool, and also how to fix something along the way too. So alright guys, so let's check out 2 little areas that really control what we're wanting to do: dispersion, twist, and fractal field. First, dispersion, twist. So if you go to dispersion, you crank it up, it just looks like it explodes, which is awesome. That's great. That's kind of what I'm wanting to make. If you go to twist, that does exactly what it says. It actually twists the dispersion. Now, one of the things I wanted to point out is this is where we run into the mistake I was talking about earlier. Because our image is 1K by 1K, it has a border and it doesn't work with form in that manner. Because of that, we need to fix our logo's dimensions, and I wanted to go ahead and just show you this so I can show you a very easy way to fix it, because here's the reality of the situation. If you use form, if you use particular, if you use quite a few things, sometimes you're so far through the project that going back and starting from scratch or going back to redo things can be a little bit of a hassle, and it's just not worth your time. That being said, I do know you can possibly like click on it and Control-C and just paste it onto another composition or anything like that. But let's do this in a little bit of an easier way. Let's create a new composition, leave it at 720p in 10 seconds, and we're going to call this Logo Fix 720p. Okay, let's drag our logo into here, and remember we scaled it down to 70%. So let's scale it down to 70%. Go back to logo form. This one we can close. I don't need that anymore. And what we're going to do is make sure that this composition, the layer, is selected, and then we're going to select our logo fix, hold Alt on the keyboard, and drag onto our layer down here. Okay, so what that did is it actually replaced it with the new composition. And when it does that, it does actually keep the original scale. So let's press S on the keyboard and turn that back to 100. Okay, so at least now we don't have any boundaries. And the only other thing you need to fix is going back to base form and changing this to 1280 by 720. And once you do that, bam, perfect, you're back in business. And there's no borders there whatsoever. Now I know you might not have needed to know that, but I just wanted to put that out there for some people because it might be beneficial for this project or for other projects. So let's go ahead and crank this up to like 50 something. Not a number you need to worry about. Open up fractal field, and we're going to look at the displace property. If you take that and you crank it up a little bit, you'll see it makes it look a lot more organic. It makes the explosion look more organic. If we don't have any displacement, it looks very uniform, very unnatural. So that's something I really want to mess with. Now that being said, feel free to take a moment, pause the video, or do it afterwards. Go through and check out some of these other attributes and just simply drag the slider around and just see how it affects the particles. Okay, because it's fun to mess with. It can create a really great result, but for now we're just wanting to do something very simple, very quick, just to get you started and get that fire inside of you to just do a lot more with this. So that being said, let's move to what's a quick map. So let's minimize fractal field. Let's minimize the base form and go to quick maps. I want to show you something in quick maps that can be really cool. So right now, the only thing I have going on is I have disperse up to about 60. Fractal is set to nothing. I have that set to 0, and that's perfectly fine. We're going to just mess with the disperse. So at map 1, let's go and click the drop down, and you'll see that there's this big red box. Now, that big red box is not just a big red box, but you can actually draw in it to get kind of a control for something. And I'm going to show you what I mean. So I'm going to click this one right here that makes a perfect slant to the right. Then map number 1, 2, change it from size to disperse strength. And then map number 1 over, let's change it to X, because it's going to be working on the X value. And now if you look, you might actually be able to see what I'm already working with. But let's just go ahead and crank this up to, let's say right there. And you don't have to do this, but I'm going to go here and I'm going to make the disperse a lot larger so you can see the effect. Now let's bring this down. So right there. Now you see that slant controls how the particles break out. So you can actually have it where it starts on the left side and moves quickly to the right side, and it just breaks from left to right, which is awesome. And it's actually what we're going to do. So that being said, let's go ahead and just set this back to 0. And let's go ahead and set map 2 to fractal strength, and again over X. I do apologize. Let's not set this to 0. Let's set this to 200 actually. The reason why is because if it's set to 0, that means that this map is actually still affecting the dispersion rate. But when it's set to 200, it's no longer genuinely affecting it. It still works as if it's not doing anything. So you know, if we go and set disperse to 0, it's not messing with anything. But if we were to change the disperse to, let's say 82, and this was set to 0, that would cause it to mess with your disperse settings. And it can be very confusing if you do that, because you might be sitting there thinking, oh, I'm cranking up the disperse, but nothing's happening. What's going on? So just remember that if you do start utilizing these quick maps, if you leave it on, turn it to 200. If you want to turn it off, you can turn it off right here. But I'm going to leave it on X, and I'm going to crank it up to 200, because that's going to make it where it's not going to affect it. I'm going to do the same for the fractal strength. I'm going to do that. because basically I'm going to have both the fractal and the disperse being controlled from left to right. All right, so let's minimize that. Let's minimize that, and let's bring that down, and we'll start from here and just go down. We're going to set a few keyframes really quick. All right, before we click these keyframes, make these keyframes, let me explain one quick thing, just in case if you're following along and you're like, okay, my computer is not that good, especially once we start animating it. Right here, there's a drop down, and if you're having trouble rendering within the viewport, set it to a 1/4 resolution. That's going to allow you to see what's going on, at least during the animation process, and when you do RAM previews, more than enough to kind of see the essentials. Full is gonna let you see the final product, of course. That being said, just be aware this can be render intensive. Okay, guys. So I just want to go ahead and at the very beginning of our layer at 0 seconds, I just want to go through and key the things that I know I'm going to be messing with for this tutorial. So that being said, I'm going to open up particle. We're going to key opacity and opacity random. We're going to close that, and we're going to go down to disperse and twist. We're going to go ahead and key that. We're going to go in fractal field, and we're going to key our displace. And then we're going to go to our quick maps, and we're also going to key the offsets for these two. Okay, not any of the other ones, all right? And so the reason why I want to do this is because I've seen other tutorials where they have something very intricate and they have all these drop downs open and they start running around changing things all over the place, and it just it can confuse you. Even if you sort of know what's going on, it can confuse you. So part of the reason I wanted to key everything is now I can select the layer, press U on the keyboard, and that's going to open up all the things that I have keyed. All right, now, so one thing I want to go ahead and do is I'm going to actually delete these first two keyframes for opacity and opacity random, but at least the attributes are there, so I can mess with them later on. Let's go to the 4 second mark, and let's put our dispersion to a nice large value. We'll do 400. Okay, let's put our displacement to 100. That should be good enough. Yeah, that looks pretty well displaced. Another thing is, let's go ahead and key the map offsets to 200, because remember, we want them to be we want the dispersion and displace to be in full effect at this time, for now. So now let's go back to the beginning, and you see it's kind of coming back. I forgot to actually set disperse to 0, so let's go ahead and set that back to 0. Let's scrub through a little bit. Might take a little bit to load. You'll see it's kind of exploding. Awesome. But one of the things I wanted was for it to explode from left to right, right? So press home on the keyboard, and I'm going to change this map offset for both of these to 0. All right, now let me do a quick RAM preview to show you what's going on. So I'm going to take my work area, I'm going to bring that down to maybe the 5 second mark, and I'm going to do a RAM preview just so you can see. All right, here we go. We got a nice little RAM preview. Let's see what's going on here. Breaks out from left to right. It disperses a lot, and then it kind of pauses right there at the end. See, it pauses right there. Okay. So let's stop this and kind of break it down a little bit. Right, so our map offsets are definitely working. Go from left to right, or at least it seems like they're working. But looks like I made a mistake, and I'm glad I did, because I didn't plan this, but it's a good thing to show you. So the mistake I made is with the map offset that's set to the displacement. So right now the displacement is actually messing up the logo. So let me crank up the displacement to show you what I'm talking about. We'll get rid of that key, of course. So I cranked it up, and you see it's actually just messing up the logo over there. And that's not what I want. Because towards the end, I'm gonna actually take the actual logo and I'm gonna use a mask to fade it away and also bring in the particles. So I can't really have this wiggling around. So let's open up our quick maps. Find the fractal strength, press the drop down, it's map 2, and you see I have it where it's just full strength the whole way. So it's not going to do anything. So once I click this, you're going to look over here and you're going to see all of that go away. Click. Perfect. Cool. Alright, so we have our basic parameters, and that's awesome. But one of the downsides is the opacity is kind of too strong. So one of the things that I really want to do is maybe about right here, I'm going to select opacity random, and you can kind of play with it and put it wherever you want. It doesn't need to be anything perfect. And about right here, let's have opacity random just cranked up to 100. And that's going to really break up the particles. It's going to make some look larger than the others. Again, if you really wanted to, you could animate the, let's go into particle, you could animate the size random. Actually, you know what? Why don't we just go ahead and do that? Let's click a keyframe. Let me go over here. I'm going to click a keyframe for opacity since I deleted it before. And let's press U on the keyboard. And that brought up the size random. So I'm not at the opacity point yet, so I'm not going to mess with that. Size random. Let's make another keyframe, just in line with the opacity random, I guess. And right here, let's crank up the size random to maybe like 50. Okay, so that's really going to help to break it up, because if you look, I know once this video gets compressed and uploaded, it's going to not show as much, but let me zoom in a little bit. You see some particles that are brighter, some that are larger, some that look like they're definitely going back in Z space. So great, that's awesome. Alright, so let's scrub through this a little bit more right here. Alright, so here's one of the issues though. If you use size random, and especially opacity random, it will start to mess up over here on the right side. So just be aware of that when we're actually overlaying this on top of our logo in the end. The wiggle effect is much more noticeable if things don't line up. Or sorry, I said wiggle effect. The displace, it makes it look like it's wiggling. It's a lot more noticeable when you overlay it and you're doing the mask fade. This is not so much noticeable because when you put the logo behind it, it simply just overlays on top of the logo. It's perfectly fine. That being said, let's move to about, right here is good. Click on our opacity, go a little bit further in, and let's just take our opacity out. Right, so we animated our opacity going out because we don't want our particles staying forever, of course. So why don't I go ahead and do a quick random preview just to show you where we're at. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Alright, we've got our logo breaking apart from left to right. It's at a pretty decent speed. I want to speed it up just a tad bit more. Other than that, the particles, they flow out, alright, they dissipate at an appropriate time. So great, that's good. I just simply felt it out. One of my favorite things to do is with an animation is to just try and do it organically. And what I mean by that is, yeah, I could have typed in 3 seconds over here and gone to this 3-second mark and made a key for opacity and then went and just lined up the opacity out right here. You know, I could have done a lot of strict values, but you know, just kind of fill out the time frame. And a lot of times before you go into a project, you're supposed to do that anyway. So right now, I'm just simply trying to wing it. So, you know, if I do run into an issue, I get to show you. And also, I don't want you to just kind of fret over the numbers. So, cool. This looks great. The only thing I said I wanted to do is I want it to break from left to right a little bit faster though. So one of the ways to do that is to just simply grab these 2 keyframes here. And let me get to right here so I can show you what I mean. So right now it goes from left to right in about 1 complete second. So I want it just a tad bit faster. I want it like maybe a 3/4 of a second. So let's put our timer around there. We got the 2 map offset keyframes that are at the end, and we're going to take them and we're going to pull them in. And as we pull them in, see up there, you can see it's moving to the right. And that actually means it's breaking in faster. So let's try that. I'm going to do one more RAM preview, and I think we might be good with this. Okay, so I scooted the map offset keyframes forward, and so what it did is it actually sped it up just a little bit. But unfortunately right now what I'm seeing is the opacity going from 100 to 0 kind of happens a little late. So, and I do feel like I want that left to right feeling to be sped up just a little bit more, but I don't want to take too much off the end because it's gonna mess with the speed of the particles. Again, this is something you kind of just have to feel out, you mess with. So let's pull this forward a little bit, and then since the particles kind of are done breaking out far before that, let's go ahead and take this and pull it in maybe to about there. Let's take that and pull it back up just a little bit. Line it up with that. Cool. One more RAM preview. All right, let's see what we got. All right, that's pretty cool. I do see it kind of dissipate or slowing down right there before the end, but that's perfectly fine. We can get that to fade a little bit more later on if it just doesn't feel right, but I like the way this looks. That's good. So let's press spacebar to stop that. Let's see where this starts breaking out. Right there. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to take my work area. I'm going to set it to there. I'm going to go all the way to the end of my opacity because of course there's nothing else after that. I'm going to bring that and I'm going to trim it to there. Alright? And what I'm going to do here, just go up to composition. I'm going to trim comp to work area. I'm only going to do this for the tutorial because I'm just doing something else to show you. And because I'm going to show you that, I just want to go ahead and trim it and make it easy to view for you guys. Now, that being said, I would not do this when you're working on a full project unless you know you're 100% done with it. So I'm going to go up to composition and trim comp to work area. And because I went ahead and made all those keyframes, the ones that are over here, the ones that are kind of disappeared way over here, they still exist for this keyframe. Or for this, this layer. They still do exist. Actually, I'll even show you. If I drag this over, see, there's keyframes right there. So all I really wanted was this explosion. Bam, perfect. Now, let's go back to our project. Let's make one more composition, and we'll call this Final Comp. Of course, you can name it whatever you want. This is all for tutorial's sake. Let's go ahead and close these two. We don't need those for now. Let's drag our logo in, which is the logo fix 720, and then drag our logo form in. Put that on top. Now you'll notice the logo form actually makes it brighter. That really is not what we want. This is the logo we created. This is the logo that we're using to break apart. So, but that's okay because when it breaks apart, all I really want is the particles. So, let's just look at it. And let's go ahead and pull this over to, let's say right here. I'm going to pull this up to right here. That's good. So that way there's a little bit of a buffer zone. You see the logo, it goes psh, great, goes away. Maybe don't need that much time at the end. Alright, and because I don't really want all that excess space, I'm going to go to composition, trim comp to work area. That's fine. Again, more of this is for tutorial's sake. So, let's get to this point. So that's where it starts coming in. I'm going to go and create a rectangle mask. Let's zoom out a good bit. If you hold space and left mouse button, you can move around, just in case you guys don't know that. Let's just draw a nice big square over everything. Yeah, perfect. Cool. And then grab the two on the side. Right. Let's put that about right here. And I'm going to actually go and turn this to subtract. That way it deletes it, and then as you move away, it reveals it. Okay, and let's, one of the other things I'm going to have to do is a mask feather. So let's use this feather until I start seeing the side brighten up. So I know it's really maybe hard to tell with the video, but I can see right here on the left side that's brightening up just a little bit. So that's good. So I'm going to press M, which will actually open up the mask path property. Just for your sake, let's go ahead and just open up all of them. I'm going to keyframe that, and we're going to move probably to about right here. We're going to grab this and move it over. And I'm actually going to grab these two and move them over as well, because I want this to go off the frame. Okay, so let's take a look, and let's turn this to none for just a moment. Now you see my mask is not going as fast as the animation is itself, so at this point it needs to be further along. Now that being said, I went ahead and made this where I need it to be. So let's go to where we can see right there. That's where this part of the mask needs to be, right here. So let's grab our last keyframe and just simply pull it closer to us. Bam. So rather than actually trying to grab those two handles, you're just manipulating the keyframe. So it should be following along pretty good. Alright, that's a pretty good start. Let's do subtract. So it goes. Okay, awesome. And now what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to grab this mask, I'm going to copy it, I'm going to paste it right on top of this one. Except I'm going to open that mask and I'm going to turn it to add. And I made one unfortunate mistake. I should have pasted it right there, but that's okay. Let's grab our keyframe and scooch them over. So now, as this mask moves along, it takes away the original logo. Now I know you might be wondering, like, if you're watching the video, you might be like, oh, why are we doing that? Again, because if we have this by itself, let's turn that back to none, you will be able to see the particles. Especially if you want to use the size random and the opacity random, because you can't really control those. And actually, why don't I just go ahead and show you that really quick. So let's grab this, let's open up our form, let's go back to our quick maps. Now remember, our quick maps is what is allowing us to break it apart from left to right, which is great. It's looking good right there. But if we go to here, these are our only options for the quick maps. So of course we can do audio react. There is opacity, but there's no opacity random and there's no size random. So if we do anything like this, it doesn't have the greater control that we need. So rather than trying to continually manipulate this, I know that I can simply go to this, let me exit that, and put the logo in the background and make it where it looks exactly how I want it. Okay, and for right now it does kind of look like you're just simply doing a fade on that. A little tweaking here and there would fix that. So let's do a quick RAM preview and show you what we got. Okay, here we go. This is what we got. Great. So that was the goal I wanted to achieve. That was the thing I wanted to show you. The form is really great when it comes to just doing something very particular like this. All right, so we got it looking basically how we want it. So I want to do kind of one last little thing. So let's just, I want to give it that zoom in effect. So there's two ways you can achieve this. You could take your layers, you could turn them into 3D layers and turn on your 3D capability, create a camera, sure, and then have it where you animate the camera moving in, right? So I'm going to Control Z out of all of that. Or I can just go to New, create a null object, take both of these, pick with them to the null object, And if you wanted to, you could call it zoom effect. And just take that, go to the very beginning, press S on scale, and then go to the very end, maybe about right here, just so I can see what's going on. Because if you try and scale something that's just straight black, it's going to be a little tough, so that's alright. Let's move that keyframe over. Let's see how it's kind of moving. See, it looks like it's zooming in as it breaks apart. Awesome. Alright, so that's it. I really appreciate you guys watching. Thank you for watching. If you can, please subscribe, give a thumbs up. Let me know if you guys want any other kind of tutorials. I try my best to just take a tutorial and get right to the nitty-gritty. I probably did a little more explaining in this one than I normally do, but again, I did try and say at the beginning that this was for beginners to more intermediate users. I just wanted to make sure that I was leaving no stone left unturned for creating what you see here. So again, thank you very much guys for listening, and have a good one.